Hello, it is EnJewel Uncut. It is March 31st, 2023, and it is the last day of celebrating International Women's Month. And I'm so excited to have with us a global advocate that has helped in so many ways. And I want to share her story, and that's with Deidre Pujols. Deidre, are you online?
I'm on.
Okay, welcome to EnJewel Uncut. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I know it's not morning time on your side. Again, Deidre is actually in Moldova, and she's actually in the gym. And I hope that this podcast actually is something somebody listens to while they're in the gym.
Yeah.
Well, Deidre, I know we've known each other for some time now, and I actually, in my beginnings of starting EnJewel, I was introduced to you in your fight against human trafficking and your start with strike out slavery. But I wanted to share with the audience a little bit about your reasoning for getting in the space and just a little background, and if you can tell a little bit about your story and what you're doing today.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me. And I hope that whatever we share today can motivate, inspire, or, provoke all the ones who will listen to this into doing something, even if it doesn't become human trafficking or other things we talk about, but that they'll just be inspired to be passionate about their life and their life purpose and stuff. So I always want to speak into people and make sure it's effective. But yeah, I'm in Moldova right now. Moldova has been birthed out of Open Gate International. Open Gate International, before I knew it was that, back in 2016, I began to meet some folks who were working in Mexico City who had a safe home for young girls, and they were doing lots of work in the anti-human trafficking space, housing survivors, giving survivors employment. And I wanted to go check it out. Before that, I had always been involved with Down syndrome and poverty in the Dominican Republic, because that's where myself and my ex-husband just had the most, we were most familiar and most experienced with that, because we have a daughter with Down syndrome, and my ex-husband was in the Dominican Republic. So, so we started an organization on behalf of those missions. But in 2016, I was starting to hear about a new problem called human trafficking, and I was provoked to find out more and began to just very quickly meet people in the space. Most of those had organizations, most of those were Christian or ministries in some kind of way. So in 2016, I basically traveled the world trying to just learn as much as I could about this issue called human trafficking. What were people doing about it? What did it look like? And it was an eye opener. Like, I never could have imagined. I never paid attention to it before the way that I did when I started learning about it. But once I kind of came back from all the different countries that I visited, through all the incredible people that were working on the issue, I basically felt like, man, like I couldn't just write checks. I couldn't just not do anything. Like, I had to do something. And so I kind of had to sit down and figure out what about me could participate in this effort of keeping people safe and keeping people educated. And so a couple of things came out of that. I started an organization called Open Gate International, and I also launched a campaign called Strike Out Slavery. Open Gate International was started because I basically saw that globally there were some people doing amazing work trying to combat the efforts of human trafficking and help survivors, assist survivors, rehabilitation, and all these kind of things. But what I saw where there was a big gap was in trying to get those people who are now secure and safe into sustainability, like having a thriving, sustainable lifestyle where they don't have to hustle or feel like they have to go back into life or anything like that. And so, because a lot of times with human trafficking, the people who are trafficking you, or perhaps in our modern culture, pimps or different things like this, they'll take care of you. So now you're on your own and you have to do it yourself. And so I just felt like there was also a lot of 501c3 mission-hearted philanthropic people who are good at that, but they were also trying to be business minded, and a lot of them didn't have that background. And so there were this like really unchallenging, I would guess you would say, like vocations trying to be done for them. Like, um, they would do jewelry or painting or purses or whatever, and that's cool. And I bought some stuff from those, you know, different people, and they're good. But really, you have like engineers and nurses and chefs, and you have all these people that could be aspiring to do anything they want, and they just kind of needed a one up, and some support in that area. So in my experience, I felt like the culinary arts is what I could bring to this issue. I love cooking. I've studied under some great chefs. And I basically started a culinary program where we could bring in trafficking survivors, train them up, and get them jobs. When this started for me in Orange County, California, and when I started it and we started to network within the community to let people know that this is what we were doing, we discovered that there were all kinds of vulnerable groups of people and populations that needed the same kind of service. So they were being fed, they were being housed, they were being treated with therapies, but it was really hard to find them proper training for a career. So I started a culinary school in Orange County with a gentleman named Chef Brent, and then later with Chef Cynthia, who's currently still with me, Chef Cynthia. And we basically held classes open to all different groups of people coming out of incarceration, human trafficking survivors. Matter of fact, surprisingly enough, for me, there were many labor trafficking survivors coming through from India and the Philippines and Eastern Europe. It was really bizarre. I had never seen or heard that before. So those are the kind of things that we did in the beginning. That was the kind of group of people. It was a phenomenal curriculum and very successful. But then when COVID, well, let me back up before COVID. Before COVID, we also began to go internationally. So I have collaborated with a group called Vision Rescue in India, Mumbai, India. We built a beautiful kitchen for them and trained the chef they hired to run the school, taught them how to do life skills, and it's brilliant, and it's still going.
That's great.
We also built a kitchen in Cambodia for an organization called Agape International, and there's AIM for short. And they're some of my dearest friends. And those two groups have very vulnerable people to human trafficking. Sometimes, like for instance, AIM has a majority of their recipients are human trafficking survivors. So because human trafficking is so prevalent in Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, as you know. So, and then we had a collaboration with that group that I started out with, learning from in Mexico, called El Esposo de Vida. And we basically helped them support and sponsor a kitchen that somebody taught in with the women who were prostituting on the street. So I've gone to Uganda, Brazil, I've gone to several places throughout the world, Russia, Belarus, and just always trying to see like how can we plant our program into these places that need it, to try to create skilled workers for the culinary industry. So that's what happened with Open Gate International. And then when COVID hit, all of the programs kind of just took a hit. And so in Orange County, I happened to move that program inside of a juvenile hall. And we began piloting a small program with young men who are 18 to 25 years old. And it has become kind of a sensation. We started that back in 2021. And now we've been there over a year and a half almost. And now we have 4 programs. We have one with the girls, another one with a different department. Like we have different departments of juvenile hall working with all these different kids. And so it's been phenomenal. It's very successful. We're one of the most celebrated programs in the institution. And Chef Cynthia is just killing it. So, and then I didn't mention my program here in Moldova. We have a building with 2 big kitchens in it. And we teach classes all year long here with vulnerable groups of people. A lot of them are coming from villages. The villages basically are incubators for the vulnerable groups of young girls who will be trafficked into places like Turkey or Italy or Romania, where they're then trafficked. And they're typically lured in by job offers or modeling careers or all these false advertisements, and then they end up getting reeled into what becomes trafficking. And so we're here. This is one of my most successful programs. I have an incredible team here, and I come at least once a year to try to just check in, have new developments and see how things are going. We also opened up a child welfare department here, and we work very closely with the government in educating all the professionals in the industry dealing with orphans, foster care families, and things like this. And we were one of the first responders to the Ukrainian war crisis. We ended up having to house and feed. We shut our kitchens down from school for nearly a month and a half, just making
Wow.
meals every day for these families who are coming in. It was pretty unreal. I mean, I got a phone call one day from a friend of mine who did a lot of videography around the world for me and knows he's also in human trafficking. And he called and he said, "Hey, can you put me in touch with somebody in Moldova who can help me? I have 127 orphans and orphan caretakers walking to the border in Moldova right now, and we don't have anywhere to put them." So within one phone call to the girl who works for OGI in Moldova, we had them placed. And so
Wow.
it was just like really incredible God-sized stuff that was going on, that we've been able to be a part of, and it's quite rewarding, but it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, and to be able to show up for somebody in a time of a lot of trauma and transition, like, meant a lot for us. And so we I love this country. It's like it's the second least visited country in the world, from what I'm told by statistics, and it's like one of the poorest countries in Eastern Europe. But it might be poor on paper as far as monetarily, but the people are rich in spirit, and this country is rich in history, and these people generationally have been through a lot. So it really blesses me to be a part of something like this and watch God, as He says, uses the little and the weak to do mighty things, and
Yeah.
that's something that I see here in this country. So I'm really blessed by that. But basically, that's what happened with OGI. And then on the flip hand, I did a campaign using my ex-husband's platform, baseball, to create Strike Out Slavery. And that was strictly a campaign to create prevention and awareness, which not a lot of people put their money into. It cost me millions of dollars to put that campaign together over 3 years. And
Mhm.
and then COVID hit, so that shut that program down. But it still has a bit of a heartbeat, and another amazing organization, a couple of them, are taking it over to kind of be able to monopolize on what we had started. And so we use baseball stadiums, we use musicians, we use an alliance of organizations that came together, and were able to globally spread this campaign message about human trafficking, and also using athletes. And so it was amazing. We were reaching people through social media in the billions, is what they told me. So globally, because the alliance of organizations that we use all had, uh, they all had projects all over the world. So, we had people celebrating from all different kinds of countries these efforts. So we would come together on a day, we'd hype it up, come together on a day. The athletes would be involved and do media campaigns. Nick Jonas performed for us, Lauren Hill performed for us, and we would have them part of the campaign. So it was just a very, very intense but effective campaign that we did. That was something I was very proud of. So to know that a group like Nick Mick is taking it over, it's about missing and exploited children, one of the biggest organizations in our nation in that capacity. So I'm really proud that they want to take it over, and they've asked me to kind of facilitate still the idea of striking out slavery and things. But anyway, that's kind of like what I did with that platform in human trafficking. I've met survivors, I've met pimps, I've met prostitutes, I've met 12-year-old girls who were impregnated by perpetrators. I've heard stories from the cartel shooting one pregnant girl in her back 5 times as she ran away to try to escape, and she lived by the grace of God. And like you always think that you had always heard the worst stories when it came to these survivors. Like you were listening to like how could they think they're making this stuff up? But probably the number one thing that stands out to me the most amongst my entire experience in 2016 is the redeeming part of everyone's story, from the people who were trafficked to the actual people who service and provide for the traffic victims, and also for the traffickers. The 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 one same thing across the board for me that stands out the most is the redemption of it all. They don't cry when they tell you the story that they were shot in the back 5 times or tied to a chair or raped multiple times or kidnapped or whatever. They are emotional and cry and fall apart at the point where they were rescued. And the reason why they do that is because they see God's grace in that and how God rescued them. And he used a person to do it. And so that's the part for me that like always provokes me to do more, is to watch how people were having these encounters with God and having something so horrible and tragic happen to them, but be so free and redeemed, knowing that God saved them. And so for me, that was really, really big. And yeah, so that's it was a lot of years that I spent solely focusing on just human trafficking, anti-human trafficking work. But one of my other favorite groups to work with is the incarcerated population. So that's what we're doing now. Since COVID, we've been running these programs at Juvenile Hall, and very, like I said, it's very successful. I get to have relationships with the young people when they come out to help get them jobs and help facilitate their needs in different capacities. So that it's been really interesting, rewarding, challenging, and the likes. But yeah, so that's kind of what I do.
Well, I'm getting some questions coming in, Deidre, and so I'm going to share some of those as they pop up. But as you were sharing the idea that Moldova less traveled and not heavy tourism, what brought you to Moldova? What was the draw there?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I always tell that story when I'm talking to the Moldovan people. It's like, I didn't even know Moldova was a thing. I didn't know it was on our planet. I didn't know what was on our planet. What happened was I ended up meeting an organization in Kansas City at the time where I was living. That's where I'm from, but I lived in St. Louis for many years, and then I moved back to Kansas City for a few years. But basically, there was a group there called Exodus Cry, and they're a phenomenal organization. He has basically single-handedly decimated Pornhub by exposing many things. So, Matt, if you ever get a chance to interview him, I'd love to connect you. His name's Benji Nolot. But anyway, so Benji had learned that child pornography was one of the major commodities coming out of this country. And so they were going to come here with Thorn, which is run by Ashton Kutcher's camp, and do some kind of investigative work. I don't think that they weren't able to fully exercise that campaign and come out here, but that's how I learned about Moldova. And he had a couple of people that worked with him at the time, 3 people to be exact, that were, well, a couple of them were wanting to move out here, but they never got to through his organization. So once I studied a little bit more about what's going on, what do they need, what do we do, I ended up moving a husband and wife out here from America, and they ran Open Gate International here, basically organically from, planting the seed and then having to water it for over here for a year. Made some amazing organizations, built a kitchen, one of our first kitchens in a small little village. Was making relationships with people. So yeah, it was really through another organization that I found Moldova. But by the first visit, I was like, head over heels about the place and the people, and I've come back every year since.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go to a lot of the third world countries. Yeah, they're not monetarily rich, but they are so rich in life, and it's wonderful to see people how they laugh and have not a worry. And here you're thinking, "Gosh, I worry every day," and you see these wonderful people, men, women, children, that they're laughing and just feeling like they have everything. And here we're like, we don't have enough. So it's always nice to connect and have that, see that for yourself. And I try to bring kids also to come in and say, you are blessed, and go on these missions, and actually see the programs and see how really truly they are blessed. So I truly see that too. Questions come up, and although we're not faith-based organization, EnJewel, we're faith-founded. We never push any religion on anyone. But questions come about as they really like the strength of the word redemption. And as you meet up with survivors and those who cry out, do you see the transformation for one to become a believer? That's been a big shift where people have a hard time in shifting and becoming a believer. What are some of the challenges that you've seen, especially countries that are not Christian based, and that they become a believer?
That's a great question, because I can't help but talk about my God, like He is my source, and I've seen Him work in my life so hard that He's completely undeniable, and nobody can walk me out of it. If I have, I feel like I have discernment, especially at my age. I've been through a lot. I've met a lot of people in our kind of celebrity life or whatever, and you just learn how to navigate. Like, but I'm a very intimate person, so I can talk to 50,000 people in a stadium, as I have. But I would rather take you out to dinner and kind of learn a little bit about you, because when I learn a little bit about you, what's happening to you, how you grew up, I can hear how you're thinking. I can know how to approach a conversation that would be more intimate, like, where are you at in your state of belief? What do you believe? What are your thoughts on that? And kind of, because I have been in places, like, for instance, I was in India one time, I remember, and it was very Islamic, and but I was with a family who was a part of our school, and so I felt safe because I was with them. But I had security and whatever. But it was a place, like, had we said anything about our faith, it could have got dangerous for us. But I trust God so much that I kind of don't have a fear, which kind of scares people who love me. But I mean, really, that's what being a believer is. You lay down your life because you're saying that it's not your own. It belongs to God, and whatever His mission is for your life, that's what you want to step into. Be obedient, follow His voice, know the Holy Spirit. Where is He guiding you? But the only way we can do that is by knowing the Word. If you don't get in the Word every day, you're not going to know about God. You're not going to know how to. It says the Word is our sword. That means that's how we defend ourselves. It says the Word is life. It is Him, and He is the Alpha and Omega. He's the beginning and the end, and He knows it all. So He also makes bold statements like all the inhabitants of the earth, everything in it and on it, and everything in the universe was created and belonged to Him. So I have to know who is my ownership and who I work under, and I work under the authority of a kingdom, and I'm a citizen of a kingdom, and so I have privileges and rights that are spiritual but manifest on earth. And that takes, like, some wisdom to know what I'm saying. If people are listening and they're not faith-based at all, or know who God, or have a different God, they're not going to know what I'm saying. But I believe that is my truth. And so I'm careful. I'll say that. Like, I use wisdom when I'm working and doing what I do. But the thing is you would be surprised. Well, I'll give you an example. You'd be surprised how much people listen when they're hurting, right? So when natural disasters happen, when war happens, when all these things happen and people are left with nothing and no one, looking for food, looking for shelter, and we show up as the body of Christ, you better believe that they have a heart that's ready to listen. They're going to want to know why, like, somebody from America would want to come all the way over here, go out in the freezing cold and provide soup for somebody. Why would you want to come and find me a place to live? Like, you could be over there doing your, glorious life. So there's something happens in the time of crisis. And I believe that God uses those moments, even for a survivor, blessing a survivor of human trafficking, even mercy, which is such a powerful thing. Watching somebody who has hurt another person and being able to have mercy on them, because you know that they're just as lost as anybody else. Like, I don't believe that the men who have been arrested for flying all the way across the world to an Asian country to buy a 7-year-old for her virginity for $1,000 plan to do that as a young person. Something they were provoked in some kind of way along their life, and they, you know, whether it was dopamine fix or whatever, it just porn wasn't enough, and buying a prostitute wasn't enough, and then they had to get young. It's just it's like a perpetual state of depletion. And so I have mercy because we all have fallen short, all of us. Not if you just kind of get it right. No, if you got it wrong once, all of it's wrong. And so that is our, you know, grace is our gift to 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 show other people because we've been shown grace. And so I just, you know, as far as like somebody saying they were founded on ministry, but kind of have to tread carefully as they walk out their organization's purpose and mission. Yeah, I mean, especially if there's like, if you're a 501c3, you wonder like how much can you cross the line when it comes to faith-based programming and being a ministry. But we are called. We are the body. We're called. You can minister no matter what, where you're at. I don't really know if I answered the person's questions, but I feel like my main thing would be like, no, if you know who you are and you know whose you are and you know the kingdom that you operate under and the word and the authority that we have in this world, like you can find ways, like God will navigate you and you use wisdom to be able to do ministry even when you don't call it ministry, you know.
I think the question, or what I reread the question again, and I think they were standing and the term of redemption, and that she's currently working with some survivors, and for them to know that they have this opportunity, this blessing. You know, it doesn't just happen. It's not happenstance. It's not coincidence. It's not serendipitous. It's faith. She has a faith that she believes that there is a reason for our paths to cross. But for to have the other person to understand, to become a believer, have you seen that transformation, that conversion? Because she doesn't see that here in the U.S. And are you seeing that in international countries or even in the U.S.? I mean, we're talking about the incarcerated. A lot of times, a lot of them, for the first time, reads the Bible or first time says a prayer. So, tell her a little bit more about that experience and somebody converting and just, oh my gosh, I'm now redeemed.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because like I get so excited about Jesus that like I want to go into prison and like convert everybody. But they quickly taught me that is not going to happen. And so it's because I saw how God changed my life as a young person and the mess I was in and how he got me out and the places he's put me in the world that no man could have done for me. And so I kind of now had to learn so much about just being him. When I have a chance to speak his word into somebody, I will. But when I show up and show up and show up and show up and I'm consistent and disciplined in my behavior, my actions, my genuine unconditional love for these people, you know, when I'm standing in this prison and I'm working with these kids, cooking, I call them kids, they're young adults. You know, I'm looking at somebody who killed somebody, or I'm looking at somebody who hurt somebody, you know, but I don't believe that about them. What I love to believe about people is what God says about them. So the way I treat them like God shows up to treat me every day, even though I did something wrong, or I thought wrong, or I had bad intentions, or whatever. So I feel like that takes a special kind of grace and discipline to be able to do that. Right. I'm not calling myself special. I mean, I am special because of whose I am, but I'm just saying, like, they hurt. Like, if you're looking at somebody who hurt somebody or who did something bad, if you just look at them for the thing they did bad, you'll never be able to see them in love. And so, for me, redemption is being able to remind them who they are. Identity. I always say I'm in the DMV business spiritually. I'm always trying to help people find their identity, because that's basically what we have is an absence of identity, an ignorance of identity. Somebody might identify with their culture, they identify with their family, they identify with their religion they were brought up, they identify with their friends. They do something bad, they call themselves bad, like that's their identity. But That's not the identity that God made for us. He made us in his image. So what my job is to get them to understand at some level their identity as God sees it. Because if they've done bad, then they think they deserve bad. And that's not grace. Grace is I did bad and I got something good because I was shown mercy and grace. And so for me, it's just a matter of showing up. And I might have 10 boys or 12 boys in the program and only one walk away completely redeemed. But you never know how many people that one person can impact after that. Right. And I say that because I watched Albert be effective. He came out of the slums of, that's my ex-husband, out of the slums of Dominican Republic and transformed the world in baseball. I didn't even change my last name for a year because nobody could say it. And then all of a sudden he was getting famous. And I'm like, oh, I better change my name because now people know him. And because of his platform, you know, we have been able to do some incredible work. And so, you know, you never know who that one person is that you're helping. And it was through Albert's One Life, for instance, that we were able to do so much incredible things and impact millions of people around the world. So that's why I say, like, I don't give up on anybody, but what I've learned is people are going to change when they want to change. And the job that I have is to show up and continue to remind them who they are as God sees them. And I don't talk about their crimes. I don't talk about their bad behaviors. I try to provoke them to think different. And sometimes as a believer, you water, sometimes you plant the seed, sometimes you water the seed, sometimes you cultivate, and sometimes you're just waiting on the sun to shine to make the seed grow, you know?
Right.
So I don't know if it really answers the question, but redemption is, the redemption is why we do what we do. We want people to come to Christ. We want them to know a better life. We want them to know a better way. And that comes with redemption.
Unbelievable. I have another question, and it's coming from a company that is with the Restaurant Association. They want to know more about your culinary school. Is that you created that school? How is the curriculum development done? And who is your students? Is it all from incarcerated from prisons, or is it off the ground?
Yeah, so we were accredited by one of the organizations in America when I was on the outside, but once we went into fully working in juvenile hall, I didn't renew for the accreditation because basically we were at a point where we were teaching a very traditional culinary curriculum, like something you might find in a traditional culinary school, and it's kind of outdated with food these days, and you know, fusions and just more access to global cuisine and stuff. Chef Cynthia, who has been all over the world with me, she's just freaking brilliant. She basically has kind of put our curriculum into more of what she feels like. If we put one of our boys into a kitchen in California, for instance, they're going to be more prepared, better prepared than if we had tried to school them with a French cordon bleu you know, curriculum. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but that's not for them, you know.
Right.
We have had a couple of students, even one now here in Moldova, who went through our program, and now he's studying in Spain at a traditional culinary school. So there are people who want to like get that high, but Chef Cynthia is responsible for our curriculum, which is basically tailored to the juvenile hall incarcerated group.
Oh, nice.
And then, like for instance, our curriculum here in Moldova is catered to this culture and region because there's certain foods they don't have here. And then, like for instance, in India or Cambodia, same thing. Like they have to, because like in India, for instance, they have restrictions on certain things they don't eat, like beef or things like that. So really, it's we've allowed the chefs the opportunity to facilitate their curriculum that is appropriate for their population and their culture.
Their next question, because they're popping up with another question saying, how can we bring that program to Chicago? We have a bunch of restaurants here that would partner with your school, or are you just primarily California?
Yeah, I'm just in California right now, but but I love collaboration. Like that to me is how you get more work done.
I agree.
And and so like and you really want the natives from their states to do the work. Like this is your community, that's your state, and you're responsible for your neighbor there, right? So for me, it's like in that with that particular question, I would say like if somebody, um, if we were able to start collaborating with organizations or even facilitate the idea in Chicago, we would have to find, and I think there are some culinary uh, organizations that are focused on culinary skills in Chicago because I remember seeing some stories. But it would be like being able to collaborate with folks who are already in that space, in that state,
Uh,
and then being able to collaborate with them with the restaurants. My heart's desire is to be able to take my culinary program and put it into more prisons because there
uh,
the population of people who are having an incredible recidivism in this country is just stupid. And a big part of it is because the opportunities that people have in many places are are bad, you know, for job reentry, job training.
we're losing you, Deidre.
Hello, did I lose?
Yeah, there you are.
Sorry.
Yeah, I lost you.
Yeah, I apologize.
No,
Um,
it's
uh,
okay.
the work jobs in the groups in California are pretty progressive. We have some amazing organizations trying to help the formerly incarcerated population get back into industry. The union and culinary and construction and even things like what do you call it? Like the computer and digital space. So I would say California is probably a more progressive state, but we're also a state that arrests too much, you know, and we over criminalize is what they call it. But anyway, to answer that question, if I had a
I,
conversation,
I think, Deidre, they're looking to understand your program. Like, kind of walk us through what your organization does working in the prisons, and then even if you can, share an example of a success story of somebody who's gone through your culinary program through being incarcerated, and when they're released, how when they're finding a job, how are they, going from your training, your schooling, and then getting a job? How does that work?
well, basically before they get out, we want to have a job for them. So because we're basically like the first line of advocating and vetting. So I'm not going to send somebody somewhere where if I don't think they have the wherewith to like hold up, like show up every day, you know, be consistent and represent us well in what we've taught them. So, um, like for us, we're able to learn them because they're in our program for a while, and then when they're getting ready to get out, when they're getting out, we'll prepare a timeline for them and try to get them set up for a job before they get out. But there are some who go through our program they don't want to do culinary arts, but
So is it
they now have.
So is there a built-in kitchen in the prison that you teach from, or do they get out and go to a kitchen? How does that work?
No, so one of the classes that we run is in a full-on kitchen. Like it would be something you see in a commercial kitchen. The
Oh,
other two classes that we run are basically like set up classroom style. So we have a stove, um, we have a stove, we have an oven, we have a sink, but then most of our work is done on uh, induction ovens, like plug-in ones, on individual teaching stations. And if you go to Open Gate International, you're gonna it's Instagram and different things. You're gonna see, you can see photos of
did
some
you have a
places that were,
website?
yeah, Open Gate, intl.org.
Okay, I'm going to send that to those that are asking that question in regards to her website. I will give you that website address. I'm typing it in now. So, Deidre, again, what's the website address again?
Opengate, intl.org.
Okay.
And anybody who wants to connect with me, they can email that info at Opengate or they can email me directly at Deidre. at opengateintl.org.
DEIDRE at,
It's DEIDRE at opengateintl.org.
okay, I've sent that email address, and she's now saying and send it out to Deidre at opengateinternational.org or intl.org. And then some people said, are you taking donations? How can we give to your program?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. There's a donation button that they should be able to find on all of our platforms. Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a donation button.
On the bottom of the website, it says donate in a big blue box. And we love that. Like, we need that. We love that. We definitely are. We know that there's fruit from our efforts. You know, I really have a heart for this group of people because not a lot of people pay attention to this population. But if anybody's listening and who wants to hear how we do what we do, we know how to do it on the outside for like kind of the public and different populations, and we know how to do it now in the institutions. So if anybody's interested to find out more about that, they can certainly reach out to me.
Okay, well, Deidre, I gave them your email address so they can reach out to you directly, and hopefully they'll send you the information they're requesting. And check out your website again. opengateintl.org is the website address, and so for people to get more information. If there is something that, one of the things you opened up with is if they get anything out of this podcast, it's just to do something. Yeah. What is that do something that you think is nice and simple, can be done today? What would that be?
Well, like when I'm trying to encourage somebody, especially, a lot of people wake up every morning and they don't really know why they're here. They don't know why their life matters out of 8 billion people, And I with confidence will tell you, and I promise you that everybody's life is on purpose. We could have been born in any generation and any time on the spectrum, and we were born right now for such a time as this. And there's something about you. When God says, before the foundations of the world, I knew you, that means we came from somewhere. So when he deposited our spirit into a dirt body and brought us into this world, it was for a purpose. It was on purpose. And I believe we came here downloaded with all of our gifts, our talents, special things about us. And then as we develop, as we grow, we can start to identify our passions, what we love, what we are attracted to, where our energy is spent. And then what we do is in that growing timeline as you're developing and you're strengthening. And what I believe is you have that gift on the inside of you, but the gift is not for you. It's for somebody else. And so I inspire people to like, hey, if human trafficking, Down syndrome, culinary arts, people in prison, like if those things aren't your thing, but maybe you have a heart for something else, another disease, another group of people. Maybe you have a gift or a talent, you never shared it with somebody. Like my encouragement was to like, you weren't here to keep the gift for yourself. This gift was made for other people, and that is where you fill yourself back up with your purpose. And so I just encourage people in that way, if people don't really have a lane that they're in to help give back what is amazing about them, to find that.
Yes, you have a gift, Deidre, to speak to so many. I've always been inspired. As a matter of fact, when I first met you, I'm so crazy about the strikeout slavery, and it's so profound as to the title of what it does. And it is to strike out. We talk about eradicating the problem, and we all say we can't, it's so huge, you can't even embrace the problem. And so you have to just take it bit by bit and apply your own talents and how you can apply it. I say every industry can get involved, every person can get involved. And you're right, a lot of times we attach ourselves because a disease has touched ourselves or touched our families, whether it is MS, diabetes, cancer. There's so many things, but why say, because everybody says, name me, I need your help on this and this and this. And why do what you're doing? And I say, those are all diseases, and that's great. And I support also MS. I've supported diabetes. I've supported cancer, because those all hit my family. But this is a crime. It's a crime. It's not a disease. It's a crime that continues to thrive in all communities, every place, everywhere, anyone. And I just feel like it's incredible that it is allowed to continue to grow. And it's the number two crime in the world behind drug trafficking. But now we're hearing it's going to be the number one crime because drug trafficking use drugs one time, whereas people who can use over and over and over and over again. And now I'm like thinking, I don't want that to become the number one crime. I want it to not even be. I want us to be an advocate to fight. And so what we do today is to educate and to communicate, and that when we pass that baton to our next generation, they themselves are passionate about the work, they are educated about the work, and then they find a way of what their true passions, their true talents, their gifts, as you say, are that are given to them. They're blessed for that, to give to something, to someone. And I'm hoping that they share that gift to someone that is in this space. Again, Deidre, I appreciate your time. You continue to inspire. If there's anything else you want to share, would you like to share one last thing before we get off?
No, I think my closing remarks were on what I just said. I mean, helping our communities and using our gifts and the things about us that can, not just benefit us, our families, but our communities, and we are just a journey. We're just a part of that journey along the way. But ultimately, also too, if there's anybody on the call who does not have an identity in Christ, I encourage you to dig deeper in that, because we're all hurting and we're all lost, and we live in a really, really a really controversial and challenging time in this world. I mean, it's always looked like that. We act like challenge for our people is new. Humans screw up. That's what we do. And so, but there is a perfect one, and his name is Jesus, and he is the truth, and he is the way, the life, and that is where you find truth. So if there's somebody on the call who's never had a relationship with him, maybe they're rolling their eyes right now because I'm even talking about faith, because faith has just become whatever. I'm talking about a relationship, not a religion. And so I just encourage people who are kind of like, man, I don't really know, why am I here? Like, God is the one to ask. And I just encourage anybody who might need to hear that. So thank you so much, Naomi, for having me. I appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you, Deidre, and thank you so much. And I look forward to collaborating with you in the future and seeing how our paths were crossed for purpose. They weren't just happenstance, and I believe that there is a reason. So we'll continue our path, our journey, and pray about where it leads us. And again, you heard it straight from Deidre Pujols, and again, appreciate her, and if this inspires you. And again, to all the women out there, we're celebrating International Women's Month, and today's the last day, and we are so pleased, and what a pleasure to have Deidre with us. Again, use your gifts and talents, and at least do something today to make a difference. Again, thank you, Deidre. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.